Mountaintop experiences. Have you heard that term before? A mountaintop experience? These are like the moments of your life that make the highlight reels, the ones that you remember forever. I even remember the day I proposed to Nicole. And after 3 or 4 hours of begging and pleading, she finally said yes. It was a mountaintop experience for me. Some of you guys in here, maybe you were like the first person in your family to graduate from college. Maybe it's getting that doctor's report. Hey, you are clear, you are healthy. You just have these moments where you are on just this high of these incredible experiences. I was on a ski lift with a 70-year-old guy just the other week. We're going up, just doing the small talk thing. And he's like, man, I just turned 70, and he said, I officially retired last week. And I was like, wow, man, congratulations. Like, how does that even feel? He's like, dude, you have no idea. He's like, I got no boss breathing down my neck, no more pointless reports. I turned in my computer, I'm not looking back. He said, I'm gonna ski 100 times this season. He's got plenty of time. I remember actually a mountaintop experience I had 3 years ago, almost to the day, when I actually walked through the gates of heaven into the open doors of the brand new In-N-Out burger that opened up right down the street on Thornton. That was a mountaintop experience for me. Next week, you guys all know how it's gonna work. There's gonna be 2 teams that are gonna battle it out for the ultimate mountaintop experience, right? We call this the Super Bowl. I mean, just think about this. These guys have basically spent their entire lives preparing for this single moment. 120 million people are gonna be watching this thing on TV. Over $20 billion is gonna be bet on this one single game. And I have an absolute guarantee for you guys for what's gonna happen next week. I can already tell you. One team is gonna have the greatest mountaintop experience they have ever had in their lives. For most of these guys, this will literally be the ultimate peak they ever get to in their entire lifetime. And then another team, at the biggest moment in their life, is going to experience the most devastating defeat. That's an absolute guarantee. That is happening next week. Every single person on planet Earth shares one thing in common. Every single one of us has times in our lives where we lose. It's actually like the one unavoidable thing. No one gets through this life undefeated. I don't care how successful you are, how much money you have, how famous you are going to go through some L's in your life. And this is the hardest thing about losses that you experience. Nobody goes into a game wanting to lose. Nobody's really planning for that. So you don't spend all these years in college getting into all this debt only to come out and spend the next 5 years not being able to get a job and then having to settle for a job that didn't even require a college degree at all. Nobody plans for that. Nobody goes into a marriage thinking, this is gonna be awesome. We're gonna have some wonderful memories, a beautiful wedding, maybe have some kids, and then you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna blow it up in 10 or 15 years. Just blow it to pieces. Nobody says, you know what, I'm gonna pour my life savings, starting this new business, it's the dream of my life, and watch it all burn to the ground after a few years of backbreaking work. Nobody goes into anything thinking that. And some losses in life are so devastating that you will spend years of your life just picking up the pieces. Now, we are actually in week 5 of a series we've been in since the beginning of the year called Taking New Territory. And you know, the thing about this series is pretty much every week up to this point has had this like victorious championship run to it, hasn't it? It's had that feel. It's like, you can do it. God's got territory for you. He wants you to take it. You can win. And so this has been the whole vibe. We've been kind of like revving up the church, getting all energized, but we've now reached a point in this series where we actually need to face the reality of losing. What do you do when you fall right on your face? What do you do when life doesn't go the way you want it to? And is there even a way for you to still experience the destiny God has for you after a massive defeat in your life? So that's what we're going to explore today. And to catch everybody up, this whole series we've been following one single guy's life. His name is Joshua. There's a whole book of the Bible named after him. He's the one who is leading the nation of Israel into the promised land. And if you've been following along this series, Israel, they're coming off of 2 of the biggest wins they have ever had in their entire lives. They get across the Jordan River by a miracle of God. And last week we learned how they defeated Jericho. The walls fell down without them even having to touch it. So these people have some Kansas City Chiefs energy to them, right? I mean, they're winners. They're winners. Okay. Oh, okay. Whoa. Y'all need to pray a lot more. Okay, I got to remove like 3 or 4 more jokes from this sermon now if I know that's the response that's going to happen. Okay, Joshua, these people have some winning energy. Okay, can we? They're on an undefeated run. They're pulling things off, and now they're preparing for the next game. And so they're getting ready for this next battle. Let's pick it up. Joshua 7, verse 2. It says this: Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Bethaven to the east of Bethel, and told them, go up and spy out the region. So the men went up and spied out Ai. Okay, little side note here. I want to keep reiterating this. We have been saying this whole series that God has territory for you. He has plans, he has purposes, he has places where he wants to lead you. But you still have to step into it. I mean, last week we said, God works, but what do you still need to do? You need to walk, right? And even right here, look at this. God's leading them to the promised land. They still got to scope it out. They still got to make a game plan. Like, there's still work to be done. So there's going to be effort all the time if you actually want to see territory. So every week I've been trying to reemphasize that. Verse 3, when they returned to Joshua, they said, not all the army will have to go up against Ai. Send 2,000 or 3,000 men to take it, and do not weary the whole army, for only a few people live there. Okay, so the scouting team gets back. They're like, oh, Joshua, we don't even need to stress this at all. I mean, the Denver Broncos are over there, okay? So I'm going to see how much I can just rustle everybody's feathers in this one sermon. Okay, let me see how. So they're like, hey, send in the bench, okay? Don't let the starters get tired. We got this thing. We don't even need to worry about it. Now, you're going to see here, actually, one of the greatest risks after a major victory is forgetting why you won in the first place. So what did not happen yet in this story? I don't know if anybody noticed. They're making battle plans. Has anybody noticed that God has not been mentioned a single time yet in this story? So these people, they scout out the land and they check it out and they're like, oh, we don't even need to worry about this. And even after one big win, they're already slipping into self-sufficiency. They're just like, we got this. This isn't even one we need to worry about. And actually, if you fast forward to Joshua chapter 9, the nation actually takes on another enemy. And before that situation, look what it says in verse 14. The Israelites did not inquire of the Lord. So every single time you'll notice through this whole book, when Joshua and these people do not seek God, they don't ask him for help, and they do not include him in the process, everything goes horribly wrong. It never works. And another key thing you got to see here is a victory is not a sign that you are strong. You got to understand that too. You might be holding up that trophy, but you have to remember who was scoring all the points. Okay, last week, Joshua and these people, they didn't even have to do anything. They just had to walk. God won the game. And there's a danger in thinking that you are the one who got you where you are. Because what you were going to do then is start walking into battles without God, thinking you can handle it. So Joshua and these people, they send in the B team, okay? Backup squad. In verse 4 it says, so about 3,000 went up, but they were routed by the men of Ai, who killed about 36 of them. They chased the Israelites from the city gate as far as the stone quarries and struck them down on the slopes. At this, the hearts of the people melted in fear and became like water. Guys, the Kansas City Chiefs just lost to Riverdale Ridge's high school JV team, okay? They got spanked. So Israel, they get their first big L. They fall right on their faces. They get smacked. And this is absolutely shocking. What happened? How did they lose? I thought God was on their team. He was parting waters for them and taking down walls for them. How could they possibly lose even to these people? Now, there's actually something fascinating about what is happening in this situation. This whole series, we've been making a comparison between the generation before Joshua's and his. So Moses and the people actually attempted to take the territory one time before. Now, here's what's funny about when they tried to take it. When Moses and that nation scoped out the territory and saw what was going on, they said, oh man, too big. like too hard, not even God could help us take it. Now Joshua and this generation, they size up some of this territory and they say, oh, easy. Honestly, small. We don't even need God's help. And both of them were defeated. If you do not have an accurate view of who God is and what role he plays in your life, you are actually going to fall into a trap of either overestimating the situations you face or drastically underestimating them. Because you're going to have these moments in your life where you think, oh man, this situation is too big for me to win. There's no chance. And God says, well, you would have won with me. And then there's other situations you can face where you're like, man, I don't even need to worry about it. Like, it's not even a problem. And God's going to say, well, without me, you will fail. And so you have to be very careful about how you're reading situations because you can misunderstand the entire dynamic of what's going on. And this is what happens to Joshua. They didn't see what was actually going on here. Now Joshua is beside himself. Let's watch him process here in verse 7. And Joshua said, alas, sovereign Lord, why did you ever bring this people across the Jordan to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites and destroy us? If only we'd been content to stay on the other side of the Jordan. Pardon your servant, Lord. What can I say now that Israel's been routed by its enemies? The Canaanites and the other people of the country will hear about this. They'll surround us and wipe out our name from the earth. What then will you do for your own great name? God, what have you done? You're the one who made us cross this stupid river, God. You're the one who has us wandering around all this new territory. None of us asked for this. You're the one who put us in this position, and now we're getting our butts kicked. Come on, God. You know, there's something really funny about how quick we are to actually blame other people for things. I don't know if you've had this experience before, but I'll sometimes be walking around the house trying to rush out the door and run late. I'm like, who took my keys? Where are my keys? And of course my wife moved them. It's definitely her fault. And if it wasn't her, my kids did it. Somebody moved my keys. So I'm running around absolutely frustrated, about to blow a gasket. And where are the keys? Right there in the pocket every single time. Right in my pocket. I'm sure you've had those moments too. It's very funny how we sometimes even have a way of blaming God too. You know, you're going about your life and you experience an L, you go through a loss of some sort. And sometimes our first knee-jerk reaction is, God, what have you done? You know, I'm doing everything I can to try to follow you. I'm trying to obey. I'm trying to be a good Christian. And now I am losing. And it's all your fault. Now, there's actually one reality about life that will make your life a lot easier if you just accept it. You just need to embrace this. God is never the one with the problem. You know, God has never had to say, my bad, before. He's never had to say that in his entire life. And you got to be very careful when you start blaming God for things, because it's a sign that you are absolutely missing something about the situation you're facing. And so Joshua didn't see it. He's doing a little bit of a blame game with God, and God actually has some words for him now. Okay? And it's not an apology. Let's see what God has to say to Joshua here, verse 10. Get up. What are you doing down on your face? Okay. God is not in the mood for some pity parties right now. He doesn't even have patience for these prayers. And God's saying, I am not the one with the problem here. And God's like, you want to know what the problem is? This is what happened. Israel has sinned. They've violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. So Joshua finally gets around to seeking God. Would have gone better if he did it before the battle, but now he's gotten around to it, and God's actually giving him clarity about what is going on in this situation. And to understand what's happening here, right before the nation charged into Jericho, which is what we talked about last week, God actually passed some orders on to Joshua to give to all the people, what they were supposed to do. And so in Joshua 6, it says this. Joshua's saying this as they're charging in. The city and all that in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Keep away from the devoted things so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. All the silver and the gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury. Now, what is happening here? This is actually a principle you'll see all throughout the Bible that is referred to as first fruits. Okay, so many places in the Bible, God says, I will provide for you. I will give you everything you need. I will take care of you in every single way, but it is conditional. God says, I get the first. I get the first of your harvest. I get the first of your livestock. I even get the first of the spoils of war. These were all these people's forms of income at this time. God says, it's always mine, the first. Now, why is God so demanding of this? Well, this practice of first fruits is actually meant to be an opportunity for us to put God in his proper place in our lives. See, God does this for us. He says, I need you to do this so you have an opportunity on a regular basis to remind yourself God is the absolute priority. Because he's either first in your life or he's nothing. That's the only spot he can be in. It's the only proper place. And so God says, Jericho, first city of the promised land. So he says, it's mine. It's the first one. You need to trust me with it. So God says, every single dollar you get from that city is going into my bank account because I want you to trust me with the rest of it. So God now tells Joshua what happened at Jericho regarding their first fruits. God says, they've taken some of the devoted things. They've stolen, they've lied, they've put them with their own possessions. And here's the kicker. That is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they've been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction. Okay, so we hit our real key principle here for this message. If you really want to take territory, you really want to step into God's promise for you, you want to live the destiny he has for your life, it's God's way or it's no way. If you try to take territory in a way that violates God's way, you cannot win. It will not work. Now, even think of our day today. Every single industry, just even in our country, every industry has rules of the game. Things you have to do if you want to win. So if you're somebody in here and you work with a publicly traded company, for example, if you participate in insider trading, you are going to jail because you can't win doing that. If you are in a romantic relationship and you try to have other romantic relationships at the same time, that is not going to go well for you. That is not a good way to make a relationship win. If you are a football player and you so much as breathe on Patrick Mahomes, you will get a flag because the NFL has decided that you cannot touch that man, okay? Would that make you a little happier? You guys seem to like that one better. Every single area of life has ways of winning. And God actually has ways for you to win in your own life too. He set the rules of the game. Now, there is a word for when we violate God's ways. It's called sin. And it simply means to miss the mark. It means you are not hitting the target. It means you are living in a way that will ultimately cause you to lose. I still remember one of my very first memories of ever royally screwing up in my life. My mom took my sister and I, we were just like little kids at this time. She takes us to the store and we're going to the checkout line. And then my sister and I saw it in all of its heavenly glory. That big wall of candy right at the checkout line, right? You know what I'm talking about? When you're a kid, it's at eye level too. You can just see all of it. And so my sister and I are like, this is amazing. Free candy. And so we just start stuffing our pockets full of candy at this checkout line, and we're walking out like we just won big. We're like just feeling good. And so we get in the car and we start comparing notes on what we all got. And my mom's like, where'd you get the candy? And even my little kid self knew in that moment, this is not how you win, is it? And so she marched us right back into that store, and we had to apologize to her, and thank goodness that the clerk was nice enough not to press charges against my 4-year-old self. Okay, I got out that time at least. But it really was, it was the first time in my life I remember having this conscious realization, you don't just get to play this game any way you want. There are certain ways to win. Now, Paul is a writer in the New Testament. This is what he says in Galatians 6. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their sinful nature, from their sinful nature will reap destruction. Now, Paul's using a harvesting illustration here. And he's just saying, if you plant a certain type of seed, that is absolutely the plant that is going to grow, right? You don't plant apple seeds and get corn. It's impossible. And so Paul's like, whatever gets planted is what is going to get produced in your life. And so when he talks about this idea of the sinful nature, all he's talking about is you wanting to do it your way. He's like, if you just keep trying to do it your way and not God's way, it's going to come at a cost. And every single person in here, you know what it feels like to experience those painful consequences of trying to play the game your own way. Oh, we've all felt it. You pay the price. A lot of us in here, you got those moments you wish you could do over. You got that thing you did that ended up costing way more than you wanted it to. And no matter how bad we want to win in some areas, you just can't cheat. You can't game God's system. Because it's God's way or it's no way. Now, this kind of leads to an interesting rabbit trail, though. I just want to go down one little rabbit trail for like a minute. Sometimes you hear this, you're like, okay, you reap what you sow. Well, hold on, Brian, what about all those people who seem to be living great lives and don't care about God at all? Like, they seem to be doing pretty well, actually way better than me. So how does that even make sense? They're more successful, they're more happy. It doesn't seem like it even matters that they believe in God or not. Their lives seem to be going pretty well, and they seem to be doing a lot of sinful nature stuff, Brian. Well, actually, Paul has another comment to add to how this works. Look what he says in 1 Timothy 5. The sins of some are obvious, reaching the place of judgment ahead of them. The sins of others trail behind them. So Paul is saying here, hey, in some cases, when you do something sinful, you pay the price almost immediately. Like, you feel the consequence, okay? It catches up to you very quick. But then Paul says there are other cases where it trails behind you a little bit. I'm sure everybody in here knows the game Pac-Man. You know that classic where you're just that tiny little yellow head that's trying to run away from these ghosts. You're trying to gobble up all these dots, right? Well, you're doing everything you can, but during the entire game, you have these ghosts just chasing you around the whole time. And they have endless, infinite energy. And it does not matter how many levels you get to, how many little yellow dots you gobble up, at some point in time, those things are going to catch you. And what Paul is basically saying here is, you can run as long as you want, but at some point, our sin does catch up to us. You can't run from it forever. And so now Joshua does some investigating. And it turns out that there was one person who surfaced as the culprit. This guy's name was Achan. And Achan took some candy from God's stash and tried stuffing it in his own pockets. And so Joshua confronts Achan. He's like, what have you done, dude? Do you even understand what is happening right now? And so now Achan comes clean. And let's see what this guy has to say. Achan replied, it is true. I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. This is what I've done. When I saw in the plunder a beautiful robe from Babylonia, 200 shekels of silver and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and I took them. They are hidden in the ground inside my tent. And so Achan's like, yes, Joshua, you know, when we were breaking that city, man, I saw a Louis Vuitton bag that looked real cute. I saw some shoes for the wife. I saw a Tiffany ring, some loose cash. I just couldn't help myself. Just had to grab it. And Achan, even in this moment, felt like he could game the system. He's like, you know, I think my way is going to work fine here. It's not going to be a big problem. And now, dozens of people have died. The nation is stuck, and God says, you cannot move forward as long as you're trying to do it your way. And again, how interesting. It's not that they needed more swords. It's not that they needed a better military strategy. The issue, God says, is you're trying to do this your way. There's no way you're going to be able to win if you keep doing that. And how interesting. Did you see that last line that Achan said about this situation? He said, they are hidden in the ground inside my tent. This idea of hiding is a massive theme all throughout the Bible. If you actually even go back to the very first pages of the history of the world, you have Adam and Eve. And they have this special relationship with God, first man and woman, and he just has one thing he asks them to do. He says, hey, just don't eat the fruit from this one tree. That's all I'm asking you to do. Trust me, you are going to bring destruction on yourself if you do. But what do Adam and Eve do? They go, we know better. I think we're going to do it our way. And so they do what they want to do. And then they hear God come, and look what happens right after they eat this fruit. Genesis 3. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of day, and they hid from the Lord God. How fascinating. The first time sin ever enters the world, and the first response was to hide. Now, Adam realizes that hiding from God is kind of a pointless exercise. It is not fun to play hide and go seek from God. But look at even Adam's confession to God. He says, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Sin always results in some form of shame in our lives. It makes us feel exposed. It makes us feel vulnerable. We realize we are now in a position where we're facing potential rejection, judgment, humiliation, even just embarrassment or suffering. And so there is a natural reaction in every single one of us, and it is to hide, to cover things up in our lives and conceal them. And what is so devastating about this is as we are trying to hide things because of some of that deep shame that we experience, we actually can never bring our true selves to God. You actually can't even bring your true self to other people, and sometimes you can't even bring your true self to yourself. Because you end up falling in this trap of trying to manage one reality while then presenting one to the rest of the world. And so we hide. All of us do it. We don't even think about it. But there's another dynamic to this too. Because as we try to hide things in our lives and conceal them and even bury them, we learn another lesson about how this works. You may be able to hide the sin, but you can't hide the cost. An entire nation had no idea what was actually going on. Only one guy, Achan and God, were the only people who actually knew the truth, but it didn't matter that Achan's sin was a secret. See, in the same way that Adam and Eve's sin spilled into human history, Achan's sin spilled into this whole nation, and they all experienced the consequences. We live probably in the most individualistic culture that has ever existed in history. So we just have an attitude here in America. We think it is my life. I'm going to do what I want with it. And we say things like, I have my truth, you have your truth, I'm going to live the way I want to live, you live the way you want to live, what I do doesn't affect you, what you do doesn't affect me. And that is one of the worst lies of our culture. Because your life does not exist on an island. So many other people experience the benefits and even the costs of the decisions that you make with your own life. And a lot of us in here, you know what it feels like to have to pick up the pieces of your own life because of a decision another person made. A lot of us in here, we know what it feels like to taste the bitter fruit of our own decisions and what they have done to other people. Nicole and I actually have some friends that we really care about, and great couple, great family. But the husband and wife started to just have some tension in their relationship. Things just kind of started getting a little bit off between them. And they couldn't even really figure it out. But what actually ended up happening was the wife was hiding some things. And eventually the dam of her secrets broke and spilled out into this entire family. And even though she was hiding it, the effects were still felt. And then once it all came out, she was not the only one who suffered for it. The husband's life exploded. The kids were in the blast impact zone. And it impacted their relationships with friends, other family. Actually, their jobs were impacted by this. There was a massive spiritual and emotional cost to the whole situation. And what she had hidden in one little spot in her tent ended up creating a nuclear explosion for so many other people. This is why the Bible is very clear. Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper. You can't game the system. God designed the rules of the game. And if we try to do things our own way, there's always going to be a price. Now, this is the place in the message where I would really love for all of us to have a very honest moment with ourselves. It's just between you and God. What are you hiding in your tent? What is that thing that you have convinced yourself is maybe not a big deal? What's that thing that you just have buried nice and neat just in the corner of your life? Maybe you have it hidden. Maybe you think you actually have it under control too. But that thing may be the very reason why you cannot move forward in your life. That thing that you have hidden may be the very reason why you are not able to step into all the things that God wants for your life. Because as long as you keep trying to do this your way, God says, you can't win. You're not going to be able to take the territory that I have for you. You're not going to be able to step into the destiny and all the desires that I have for your life, because it is God's way or it's no way. Now, Achan's sin comes to light, and it needs to be handled. I don't know if you guys have heard this term before. There's no such thing as a free lunch. There's actually no such thing as free sin. It always comes at some type of cost, and it might be a day later, a year later, a decade later, but we always reap what we sow. It's just how the game works. And the cost in this case was absolutely cataclysmic. Achan and his entire family had to pay with their lives. Now, I know that sounds incredibly heavy-handed, and I know maybe sometimes you might even be hearing that and you're thinking, see, Brian, that is why it's better to hide it, okay? Better just to manage it, keep it all concealed up, or even wait as long as I can, because the minute it comes out, it's going to explode in my face. And I know for some of us, for some of the things that were coming to your mind, you're thinking, no, Brian, you don't understand. Like, if that person did find out or that got out, that could massively change the entire direction of my life. That could really create some problems. And so I'm not sure if that's actually the best approach. I can totally understand why anybody would feel that way. But I actually want you to see that you don't have any real reason to fear. You don't need to worry, because you have this. Romans 5, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. You know, right now in this moment, God sees all your stuff. He knows every single thing that you have hidden right now. He knows every single thing that is buried in your life. And even though that is true, he loves you more than you could possibly understand. You are more loved right now in this moment than you could ever fathom. And actually, however much sin you do or do not have in your life, it actually plays no role in the love that God has for you. And we said, yes, sin has a cost. It always comes with a price. Someone has to pay. But God loves you so much that he came to pay your price for you. And so Jesus, when he came into this world, went to a cross and died the death you deserve, so you could get the life that he deserved. Jesus died so you could be washed clean. Jesus paid the full price of every single bit of sin that you have in your life. Jesus lost so you could win. And this is why Proverbs 28, it does say, whoever conceals their sin does not prosper. But it also says this, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds what, everybody? Mercy. God does not want to bring judgment on you. He's not trying to beat you down. He wants to give you grace. He wants to give you mercy. He wants to wash you clean of all the things that are holding you back. He wants to help you step into everything he has planned for your life. And God wants you to experience the freedom of not having to hide. So you can know you are a precious son. You are a beloved daughter of the King. You have no shame. There's nothing you need to be afraid of. You can stand in confidence knowing where you stand with God in his mercy. And now Joshua and these people, they come clean. They just open it all up before God. And yes, there's some pain, there's some price. But look what God now says after they deal with some of the pain of this situation. Joshua 8. Then the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack Ai, for I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, his land. You shall do to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king. Do you see this? God says, oh yeah, you messed up. Oh yeah, you fell right on your face. Oh yes, this loss was on you. But I'm not giving up on you. I am just as committed to you as I was before. I want to be with you through this thing. We're going to pick this up right where we left off. And I'm going to lead you into all the plans and promises I have for your life. God says, you can stand. Nothing's going to stop you. I was telling you guys about that couple that Nicole and I know. And I want to let you know, I understand every situation has different dynamics and variables you got to consider. I understand every outcome can go in a different direction. But this couple, they had every opportunity just to decide, you know what? It's over. There's no way we are ever coming back from this. There's no possible way. It's done. We've lost too big. So let's just cut our losses and just move on with our lives. But instead, this couple decided, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, God is not done with us. And maybe, just maybe, he can even help us through this situation. And maybe he still has a future for us and a plan and some wins ahead. And so they actually leaned into it. And they did the hard work of surfacing a lot of stuff that was hidden, of working through all the issues. And it has been a years-long journey, don't get me wrong. But they were able to repair their marriage. They were able to keep the kids together. And now they are pressing forward into the destiny that God has for their own relationship. So let's go back to the question we started with at the top of this sermon. Can you step into God's destiny for your life after a massive defeat? Yes. Yes, you can. You can still step into God's purposes. You can still experience everything he has for your life. And I know for some of us in this room that is hard for you to hear because you're thinking, no, you don't understand, Brian. You have no idea what I've done. If you only knew. And I'll tell you, I've heard some things. I'll tell you, I have heard some things. And I know some of us, you're like, I've lost too much time. There's just way too many problems that I've created. And I would say, do you think Jesus' death and resurrection isn't enough to cover that? You think God's mercy is not big enough for the stuff you've done? I'm going to tell you, he covers all of it. He washes all of it clean. And God says to every single person in here, I have a destiny for you. And I want to help you step into it. And let's get all those things out of the way that are blocking that in your life. I want you to be free.